And welcome everyone. My name is Thomas. I'm the CTO of VCONIC, and I'm really pleased to introduce our newest project, the VCON MCP server. We've been working on this one for a few months now, and we've had it in our production at the best laboratory in the world, Stralid, and now we're ready to talk about it publicly. Let's get to that one. For those of you who are unfamiliar with VCONs, VCONs are a new document standard being developed out of the IETF. Those are the same nice folks that give you the standards for email and the web and OAuth and TLS and domain names. And VCONs are the latest in our work. And they're really meant to solve the problems of handling conversations. I want to talk about why we need it for a couple minutes so we level set on that. What I was taught growing up was that only the owner of a lemonade stand heard everything their customers said, which was absolutely true. But it took me a while to grow old enough to know that he may have heard everything, but he didn't remember all of it either. And of course, this is a problem which gets worse the bigger the lemonade stand gets, and it's a pretty intractable problem we've had.
Yeah.
So we also know that in the world of AI, robots can scale when people can't. Why can't the owner of the lemonade stand listen to all his customers? Because there's only so many hours in the day. So robots are really good at helping us scale when we can't. So why don't we have the robots listen to all the calls? It seems like a good idea, and it is. But it's not the only thing. What is contained inside conversations can be very, very dangerous information. It can be dangerous in that it contains the look of our face and the sounds of our voice. And those are inherently dangerous in the world of deepfakes. VCONs enable responsible analysis of that sort of conversations and allows people to express their digital rights, while it allows organizations to take that data and use it responsibly, all in the cloak of compliance and reputational insurance. So VCONs, they really have two parts, two things they do. They protect people, but they also feed robots. Um, now, what I'd like to also just touch on for a moment here is there's a fundamental mismatch in AI that I think is bears some talking. If you've noticed, AI runs on text. Today's LLMs are text-based sorts of devices. We have multimodal work that we're doing now, but even in the multimodal work, we are running on inference and next token work. But the problem is that the world doesn't run on text, it runs on conversations. And conversations, and that larger idea of a conversation, so we don't just mean conversations in terms of a voice, but conversations in terms of video or messaging, and even conversations that go between people and robots, and even maybe even between the robots. It just so happens that the shape of a conversation between two AI agents looks an awful lot like the conversations we have with each other. And so the fundamental mismatch in AI is that we've got a world which is running on a data set which is not exactly native to AI. And that matters. It matters because conversations are hard. And they're hard for lots of reasons, and not just a single hard problem about it. First of all, they're temporal. Timing matters. Who gets said in what order? That matters, and it matters the timing of what things happen. So if you just read a transcript, you might not realize that there was a 3-minute pause between words because a transcript may not capture that. It's also hard because they're multi-party. There's more than one person talking and over many modes, maybe at the same time. And it's legally hard because it's permission-based system. When you're recorded, you're asked, can I have your permission to record you? And that's because of the data regulations, which are important. And then they change over time. Some conversations are really difficult, like text messaging conversations. When is a text messaging conversation over? When does that happen, right? Is it the last message you sent? Is that over? Well, that depends, right? So it's a hard conversation. set. And so in response, most systems collapse it into transcripts and logs and summaries. I'm sure what you would see in modern UCAS systems is based upon this idea. You can take a transcript of the conversation and manage and collapse the collapsed conversation in the transcript is text. And that is AI friendly. Now I can use it. Right? So what's wrong with that? Well, the flattening destroys really important information, like the timing of what's being said. It also loses a lot of the metadata, which is really important, like consent. What consent did you gain to record this?
Mhm.
And that consent is an important piece of the puzzle, especially as it's shared across network boundaries. And it also doesn't keep track of what happened to that data. Now, I will have another talk later about GDPR and your rights as a data subject. But you as a person have the right to know how your data was processed, and that is guaranteed in the GDPR, that is guaranteed in the California, Consumer Privacy Act. This is a durable right that you have as a data subject. All of these things are lost when you flatten the conversation, and we have to flatten the conversation because the data is difficult. Now, as you've heard me say a couple times, if you've heard me before, I really feel like VCONs are actually robot food, and that was one of the first things I called it. And so, you know, AI systems don't need more text. They have a lot of text, right? They need better text. They need better nutrition. So, transcripts are a lot like junk food. They're easy to consume, they're cheap to produce, but they're at the end of the day empty because the things which make them nutritional and safe are lost. And that's where VCONs come in because they provide the minimal data set an AI system needs to understand a conversation responsibly. And again, the two sides of a VCON. So the VCONs themselves are coming at the right moment because they begin to treat conversations as first-class citizens. You remember when we talked about that, Alan?
Yeah.
Dan and Mitch and Alan and I and Paul and just the group of us that, when we first started working on VCons together before we submitted the spec to that, we used to talk about how conversations should be first-class objects, and this is exactly what we're doing, and this is why we're doing that. So that's the VCon side of this. Let's talk a little bit about MCP. MCP is a new protocol which is on the block, and so let's talk about that for a second. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. I didn't spell it out for you. You can Google that if you'd wish. And what it does is it standardizes how AI accesses context and data. And so, just a very dumb way of thinking about MCP is it's a lot like USB. On your laptop, if you want to attach something to your laptop, how do you do it? USB. You use it for your hard drives and your cameras and your displays. USB allows you to extend and connect data to your laptop. Well, the exact same thing happens with MCP and AI. MCP is a standard interface between AI models and external tools. And so in this case, the AI model might be something like Claude or and could be ChatGPT. It could be, an autonomous agent. It could be Claude code on your desktop. It doesn't have to be out in the cloud. And the external tools and services in our case are the conversations. And what we're talking about here today is how do you take conversations and attach them into your AI system. Now, here's an important piece of that puzzle. So so rather than hard coding the integration, MCP allows you to discover what data there is, to read the data that is there, to execute things on your behalf, and then to receive that data back. So that allows it to be an abstract standard for any sort of data that you're going to attach to AI. And in this case, we're attaching VCons to it. So let's talk about that, and that's MCP. And by the way, MCP is a protocol just like VCONs. There was a half chance that the MCP would enter the IETF organization, like VCONs have. It turns out that they went to the Linux Foundation, which is another great organization. So nothing wrong with that. But if you were thinking about MCP, it's just a protocol, just a protocol. So what I want to introduce to you is VCON MCP. And that's our new MCP server. Just like our last framework, the conserver, it's an open source framework that lets AI assistants manage, search, and analyze conversation records. And it's production ready. It implements the IETF standard and exposes MCP tools for assistants like Claude and ChatGPT. We've been using it at Strahd for a few months now. It's holding up. And it really basically gives you five different things you can do with it. The first thing it does is allow you to create, read, update, and delete beacons. For those of you of a certain age, that this would be the CRUD actions: create, read, update, and delete, and allows you to access all of your VCons, um, and allows the assistant and the AI assistant to do that. It also allows you to search them, and that includes semantic search. So very often in conversations, what you want to do is find a particular conversation or a particular topic. One way of doing that is searching the texts and the contents of that. And so the VCon MCP server also allows you to do that, not only for text, but semantic search with embeddings. The MCP server also allows you to tag VCons with key value metadata. And this is really pretty critical to production VCon installations where it's a much more efficient way for you to deal with VCons. If you tag them with labels like engaged customer or angry customer, or maybe you're tagging them by where they came in. Maybe this is tagged with it came in through this zip trunk, or maybe it came in through that video interface. Another thing it allows you to do is to update and manage the beacons themselves. So to add, change attachments, analyses. So imagine that you had a agentic system that was going over conversations. That agentic system would use MCP to look at the VCons using the CRUD, find them using search, and then maybe to make an analysis of them and tag it based on the analysis. Like I'm looking for people who are interested in buying cars. So interested car buyers, it might be a tag. Or maybe what I'm doing is I'm doing 100% QA on my contact center. And what I'd like to do is to be able to go over every conversation I had and add a new analysis, which is governance on my agents. How do they do in that conversation? And the MCP server allows that robot to go, okay, I'm going to give you that particular analysis. And then finally, it's designed to be extensible via plugins. So what do you want to do with your MCP server? What are the actions that you would like it to do for you, or the analysis that you wish? The MCP server is built to be extended, and simply so. It's written in JavaScript, so it scales and it's fast. And this again is an open source framework. So, uh, which which is uh, which is really transformational because it really lets you use beacons in an AI system very, very natively and simply. Because every modern LLM is MCP enabled, so you can use it with your OpenAI infrastructure, your Claude infrastructure, your Llama infrastructure, even if it's behind your own firewalls, even if it's on your own desktop, all good. Now, how does this hit the market? Like, okay, that's great, but how is it actually used and deployed? This is also really important stuff. And so what we're talking about today is what we're calling the smart trunk ecosystem. And by the way, again, people of a certain age would remember the times where we talked about SIP trunks as being dumb pipes. Well, the era of the dumb pipe is over. Now we're doing smart trunks. And a smart trunk is simply a SIP trunk that at the end of the conversation would generate a VCon. And that VCon uh, it would be usually in our systems there. This is done by a conserver. Down here you'd see a customer and an agent. They're talking to each other. The conserver itself is in line to that conversation and creates that VCon. And that smart trunk provider would have that bank of VCons available to their customers for their own analysis. This is all up in the cloud, doesn't have to be, in anyone's premises, and doesn't even have to be in your phone system. It can be before the phone system in the trunk itself. Those VCONs are then provided to the MCP server, allowing the LLMs to connect to that data. And that enables two really, really awesome use cases. The first use case is vibe coding, like Lovable. So we think that the next generation of AI of applications is done not in the SAS method, but more in the vibe coding generative method. And so by giving the MCP server directly to Lovable, you can write enterprise apps that contain customer conversations for whatever thing you'd like to. And I've been writing a lovable application every day for the past 2 months because it's just so easy to do. And some are kind of funny and some are kind of really interesting. I have a nice little feed that I wrote using Lovable that converts all of my conversations to limericks. Uh,
Oh
which ends
dear.
up being kind of funny. But I can also have deep insight to my company because I can ask it to say, look at all my conversations to find out every time I fail to offer them an undercoating when they bought the new car, right? So it's
Yeah.
stuff like that. Or I can do it, I can add it directly to my AI infrastructure. So I'll get into that in detail, but today, every single provider of LLMs provides this. And so the question is, how do I turn conversations and put them into my customer's infrastructure? Well, that's how you do it. Now, over here on the left, you'll also see here that we have a GDPR compliant customer data portal that sits also with this data, allowing the customers to express every single last one of their data subject rights as is enumerated in the GDPR, which is the gold standard, enabling the customers then to have real control over how their data is used, to be educated about it, to be able to check consent, withdraw consent at a granular level. So not just consent about, recording consent, but consent for AI training and text and data mining. So it's got a very nice, granular idea about that. This whole thing together is what I would call a smart trunk and is a uh, and I believe will be a major telecom product in the coming years, simply because if you today are a SIP trunk provider and you're looking to understand how you play in the AI world, this is how you do it. You
Yeah.
upgrade your SIP trunks to smart trunks, and now all this great robot food, all the times the customer opens his mouth, now the a guy who runs a lemonade stand doesn't have to remember because the robots do it for him. So let's just dive into a couple of interesting, use cases for a second. So one of the best ones here is this is a screenshot of Anthropic's Claude system, and they have now connectors that you can add to Claude, and one of them is a Gmail connector, and another is a calendar connector. And once you do, it brings up a new option here called Ask Strawlid. That's the name of our parent company, Strawlid. But what it allows you to do is use your LLM to ask questions about your business. Like, how many people called me today and what did they ask me for? Or are people uh what are people suggesting I should be doing better? Or please write me an email. Please write an email to the last angry customer I saw. All of these things are now native to Claude. Just ask.
Yeah.
And that happened through the smart trunk. And the smart trunk was enabled by the MCP server. Or you can have lovable applications all day. Here's one of our fun lovable applications, the dealer diary. Right? What happened today at the BMW of Brooklyn? And by the way, for those of you who don't sell cars for a living, this is actually a pretty important part of the automotive vertical in that automotive salespeople don't come into the store every day. They have weird schedules. So what happens if I have a buyer come in and my salesperson's not there? Well, part of the culture of a car store is every morning you have what's called a save a deal meeting where the salespeople get together and talk about what happened yesterday. Well, how do they know what happened yesterday? Well, today, what happens before VCons is someone runs around and says, "What happened to you today?" And they write it down, and they miss things. But with VCons, they don't miss a thing because most everything which gets done in a store is talked about somewhere, somehow, and gets stuck in a VCon. And that gives us an ability to understand the dealership at a very deep level. So with that, I'm going to go dive in a little deeper technically because this is a setup for our TADHack, and I want to encourage people to be working on this. And of course, I think already you understand what an MCP server does. We can have a lot of interesting hacks, a lot of interesting programmable intersections. We've shown you how they could be at the AI level with LLMs, or it could be at the lovable level with applications. Or it could even be in the extension level by I'm going to add more tools into my MCP server to do things that we didn't do before. So let's dive into that one just for a second. So you may have heard of the conserver. If you haven't, it is our framework that our first framework at Strawlid, and just like the MCP server, it's built on open source. Of course, we have proprietary extensions that make it much, much better, but the core is open and always will be. So the conserver is a factory. It's kind of like it processes, the VCons at scale. When a VCon comes into a company or comes into a smart trunk, often you want to add more data to it, more context. Just as an example, at Strawlid, because we sell cars, when we get our VCons in from our smart trunk, the first thing we do is attach the lead to our VCons so we know why we talked to them in the first place. And we also attach a consent. That way we know why we even talked to them. That way we know that we're not doing a bad job. Well, conservers are built to make the VCons. And if this, in just as an analogy I heard today, which is really smart, imagine that if this was a bread factory, was the conserver, the MCP server is the storefront. Once the VCons are created, how do you use them? How do you query them? How do you integrate with them? And the MCP server allows you to have independent storage and query of the conservers. And it's kind of like a, sort of a tacit thing I'm putting here, which is you can have as many MCP servers as you want, which have different views of the VCons that come out of conservers. So you don't have to be the same set of VCons that come out of a conserver that are in the same MCP server. You can mix and match them. That allows you to deliver topics, tenants, at a container level, which really helps us from a data security, way of understanding how to do it with data minimization and only, giving the data that we need. So they're independent. You can scale them independently. One is to make them, one is to use them, and this is what the MCP server does. So how do we do that? So let's just dive in one deep into the system view. Actually, how does it work? So here's our system view of it, and the dotted line is what we're calling the VCon MCP server. But actually, inside the MCP server, there's two basic parts of it, which is the MCP server itself, which is the framework, and we paired it with a open source database named Supabase, not to be confused with the Nicki Minaj song. Although the Nicki Minaj song is been in my head for 3 months. Uh, the combination of the MCP server and Supabase allow you to fill in that MCP server with VCons directly from the conserver, and then access it using three different, and I think the major ways of writing applications against VCons. The first is the old-fashioned way of REST, the way that a lot of us have been doing it for 25 years. This allows you to have a REST API, which mirrors the conserver API, allowing you to have enterprise applications that just go to REST. Or you can use Lovable, Replit, or Cursor. Now, one of the reasons we picked Supabase was if you're a Lovable guy, you'll notice that Lovable uses Supabase natively. So that is the database that they use to provide all of their functionality. And it's becoming more and more common so that you can just natively point your conserver right at Supabase and use your existing Lovable enterprise account out of the box. And then finally, we have the robots themselves. that are using MCP natively into the MCP server, using the tools, resources, and prompts that are uh, that allow you to have the MCP functionality. And just to remember that those tools, resources, and prompts for the CRUD, the searching, the tagging, and the adding of the analyses. And that happens right through the LLM. You'll also see here that we have this integrated with the Redis infrastructure that we have with the conservers. So if you want to put them into the same facility, they are high speed and very scalable so that you can provide this at ridiculous scale. Our current largest installation that MCP is involved with is running around 1 million VCONs an hour, and we're keeping up with this architecture.
Wow.
Uh, Now, finally, before we wrap this up, I just want to get back again to the business side for a moment because I know a lot of us have two hats we wear. So I also want to talk about the product packaging. And one of the hardest things I think for being a vendor in the world of AI is what do you deliver? What's the actual thing you deliver? And so getting back to the smart trunk for a second is actually pretty awesome what you get to deliver because it's a very small set and very easy for carriers to manage. And there's only four things you have to get. First of all, the DID for the smart trunk. You already do that. A lot of you already have those smart trunks, so it gives you something to upsell, right? You already have these customers, why don't you keep them and upsell them with a smart trunk, not only because it allows you to get better revenue, but the smart trunk begins to change the nature of your business. The only thing which really separates SIP trunks today is price, maybe quality, but mostly price. When your smart trunk starts to aggregate VCONs, it becomes the memory for your business. It becomes a contract between you and your customer to keep their data safe, to become a responsible controller of their data. All of these are inhibitors to churn. It is hard to churn off. And this becomes your smart trunk becomes sticky. And because it becomes sticky, your SIP trunks stop becoming commoditized. And that we feel is going to really change the game for a lot of providers. But what else do you have to sell? The REST API key, Superbase creds, and the MCP URL. You only have 4 lines, only 4 lines in a piece of paper is all you need to provide this crazy functionality into every one of your businesses that uses a SIP trunk today. So we feel like the packaging is simple. The opportunity is here. It's an easy upgrade, and it really solves, I think, one of the biggest problems that SIP trunk providers have. So with this, the world is your burrito. You can really, have a lot of interesting applications and insights and add new functionalities, and that's what we're looking for in our hack. And we want to see where your imagination, goes. It's a very big world, a lot of stuff to do, and I'm sure there's going to be really interesting things. So, not enough for you? Okay, I'll give you more. So the first is, as I said 3 times, I'll say it again. We're an open source house. We think that the foundation of AI requires transparency and trust. And transparency and trust in technology is delivered with open source. And so even though we have, some really great extensions to this, we build everything that we make and all the core on open source, and it's there for you to use. So come visit us at VCon Dev on GitHub. And there's a VCon MCP repo and 50 others now between all the adapters that we've written for all the different providers. We have example libraries, we have example VCons. So that's where you'd get that. If you're interested in standards, thank you. I think standards are really important in the world. I think open standards are really important in the world. And one of the real joys about having the jobs we do is to be able to affect the world, the entire world, in good ways. And so if you are interested in VCons and want to help us design the future, the VCon standard is slated for an RFC this year, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
But the work is not done yet. There's more to do. We've got three or four extensions that we've put into the VCON standard that we're working on, like consent or a standardized transcription format. So we'd love to see you get involved. So if you want to learn more, visit us at the IETF. And we are believers in documentation. So if you would, you can go to conserver.io, which is the classic VCON information site, with a new subdomain now called mcp.conserver.io with a complete set of documentation, examples, API documentations, and instructions on how to extend it. And finally, if you're going to be in Fort Lauderdale next week after next, we'll be at the IT Expo show. Would love to meet. And the next IETF meeting is in Shenzhen, China, in March. I can't tell you how excited I am to go to Shenzhen, China. I've never been. Actually, I've been all around the world, but never there. And so I just can't wait to go. So I thank you for your attention. I'd love to answer any questions if you have them. So let it rip.
Absolutely, Thomas. Thank you so much for giving such a detailed explanation. Now, I'll just open. Are there any questions from the audience? I know there's always reticence in terms of, I don't want to sound, but I can see we've got a few people here that I am sure can't help themselves, but have to ask some questions. In fact, I'm going to go for it. Oh, somebody trying to break through there? No. Okay. Jungle Mike. Mike, you must have some questions. No?
Well, I got some questions for you, Alan.
Oh.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, you're coming through.
Yes, I have a question for Thomas. Yeah,
go for it.
Very good presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, last time we met, you didn't have an MCP server. Now you do. So I think that's fantastic. Here's my question.
Sure.
Is there another type of upgrade that you're looking to implement for VCON on the level of your MCP server? Like what's the next stage in the roadmap that
thank you. That's a great question. Oh man, I'll tell you, he's gonna be the chief questioner. That's a really good question. So yes, actually, we're gonna have another talk in a week, right, Alan?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. And so the next thing we're going to be talking about, and this is a real passion of mine, is this GDPR compliant customer data portal and the management of consent. Yeah. And so one of the extensions that we're working on inside the IETF is called the lawful basis extension. And the lawful basis extension allows you to pair the consent with the media. I don't know if you've been following the news, but Apple last year had a $100 million fine from the FTC for improper analysis of Siri recordings, which sounds bad until you realize how much market cap they lost from reputation from doing that. Yeah. And if they had taken the recordings and then also written down the consent, they would have gained. They wouldn't have paid the price because they would have known whether or not they had the consent. And so that's the next thing we're going to be talking about. And the big reveal for that, I'd like to mention prior to the talk is, for us, traditionally, we think about consent as being communications consent. Can I call you? Do I have a TCPA violation? That is surely part of consent, but it's not all of the consent. Because there's other consents which are being developed in the IETF, like for AI preferences. So you have the right to consent to having your data processed by AI or to have your data used to train AI. And all of these different consents are also your digital rights. And so when we talk about consent, we talk about consent for purpose, not just consent for communications. Yeah. And that actually plugs into the last thing, which is We've also been trained, especially in the carrier world, to worry about how can I possibly, record somebody when I haven't gotten their consent, and the consent doesn't happen until the person calls into the contact center. So how can I possibly do that? Well, the answer is because the larger idea is actually called lawful basis. And the lawful basis is, well, why are you doing this lawfully? And consent is only one of the six lawful bases. Here's another lawful basis, which is called contract. I'm under contract to process this data to a third party. And my lawful basis for recording it is I'm doing it under contract to another company, which is extraordinarily common. So today, if you are a company and you have a payroll service, you have three people involved in that data. The payroll servicer, and they're called the data processor. They're the ones who actually process the data, but they process it on behalf of a company, and they're the data controller. Well, that relationship between the data controller and the data processor is a contractual relationship. And why is that payroll service allowed to look at your social security number? Because they're under contract to the company. Well, in the very same way, the smart trunk providers would be under contract to the companies to record it on their behalf. And that is the lawful basis for that. And so, yes, the next thing that's coming is compliance, customer data portals, and finally, people being able to answer the question, what happened to my data, and can I please have it back?
Yeah. So Monteza has raised his hand. Do you want to ask a question, Monteza?
Yes, hi. Thank you for the presentation. And yeah, I just went through the GitHub of the MCP server. It looks pretty good. I'm also a very avid Cloud user.
Yeah,
So yes, it looks
me
very
too.
nice.
Yeah.
And a couple of questions I had was first, I've seen that the database support here is for PostgreSQL on Supabase.
Yes.
So I was wondering if it was possible for me to add an extension to use like a NoSQL solution, like a MongoDB or like a Cosmos DB
What,
driver.
what a great hack that would be.
Yeah.
What a great hack that would be. This is exactly why we're here. Yes, you absolutely can.
Okay.
And that's the point of open source, and that's the point of our hack, by the way.
Okay. So I'd like to do that. And for contribution, can I just fork it and open a pull
I
request?
wish you would.
Okay. I'm
Yeah, I wish
forking
you
it.
would. We've got some really great people who are contributing and helping, and I'd love your help. So thank you. That'd be great.
Cool.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And people have won prizes for doing those type of contributions. So that's
Yeah.
great.
By the way, one of the neater things about Supabase, just not to dissuade you because I'm not, but Supabase actually adds in three or four different other things which are really interesting, like user auth and vector search.
Mhm.
I know most NoSQLs do as well, but maybe not the auth side. But yes, go. Great. All good. Very
Do
good
we
stuff.
have any more questions? I know this was a lot to take in, but I think it's good that you understand the full scope of what's being built with VCONIC. But of course, your hacks can focus on a small piece, and it's around the enterprise apps, and it could just be simple dashboards or just something that you see based on conversational data that you
Yeah,
have access to.
I really miss the days when I was participated. And when I look at the hacks here, I mean, I just my mind goes wild. I think there's all kinds of really, really interesting use cases here. So I'm sure there'll be some good ones coming out.
Oh yeah, and it's the reason I keep talking about the diversity of the people involved, because that
And
diversity leads to amazing hacks.
yeah, and the students, I mean, like, oh my God, you want to feel good about the world? Meet some of these college students. You
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
we're gonna be okay. You know,
Yeah.
I was worried for a minute.
No, absolutely. It's and it's at a time where there is just so much change happening in software development. Yet
Yeah.
for the students, they're powering through that change, which is amazing to see.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. It really is. And I'll tell you, our hiring practices have changed because
Yeah,
of it,
yeah,
right? But I also will say that the hiring practices changed when I was out of school too, right? Right?
yeah, yeah,
We first came out of school, like we didn't go to school for software, we went to school for math and hardware.
yeah.
Like, and that changed and it's changing again.
Absolutely. It is. It's a
Okay.
change of that sort of scale. So that's a good analogy. But again,
Yeah.
Thomas, thank you so much for your time. Any
Like,
questions? I'll make sure I've got Thomas's
okay.
details in there so you can talk to him directly. You'll find he's a friendly chap. Well, and he looks very friendly, so don't worry. Yeah, ask questions, seek help, go to the links that Thomas said. I'll include them in the summary for this session. And I wish all of you great luck. We've got loads of time. It's not until March. We've got the hackathon. So you've got a lot of time to think about applications of what they've built here. Okay. So again, thank you so much. Take care. I will be speaking to you soon.